Shalom, Israel. Grace and mercy from God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, be unto you. All praises to the Most High that we made it to another Sabbath day. With all that being said, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father. We do so in the name of His only begotten Son, and we do so by His Holy Ghost. All right, and with all that being said, all praise to the Most High. I am not 100%. I'd be lying if I said I was 100%. So y'all may hear me coughing or whatever, but Lord's will, I'm a whole enough to start teaching the classes again. And what a time to do it. We're coming upon the day of the destruction of Nicanor, which leads right on into Purim. So that's what I'll be touching on tonight, God willing. So let me go ahead and just check and make sure everything's functioning properly. I'll check on YouTube first and see how we're doing on there, and then I'll check elsewhere. I'll check on YouTube first and see how we're doing on there. Okay, so we're doing all right. I believe I could speak up a little bit, but other than that, we're doing all right without Facebook. So let me go ahead and just check and make sure. Okay, we appear to be doing all right. All praises to the Most High. Let me go ahead and cut that on silent. One thing, or I should say the main thing that has been happening that I have not been able to touch on is the Epstein files. A lot more of them came out before I got sick, but I still didn't get a chance to touch on it, and I'm not going to touch on it just because we know that the wicked do wickedness, right? So as far as specifically getting into all there are people that have touched on it, and it really just confirms a lot of the things that people have already been saying. So if you need confirmation and evidence for that, I mean, they're out there, right? So you can check that out on your own accord. The people who believe what the victims have been saying this whole time. It's really just vindication for that. But if you believed them this whole time, then I mean, you didn't really need this to come out for you to believe it. But it pretty much just condemns the current president, the former President Clinton, Woody Allen is another name in there. Bill Gates is just a whole bunch. Elon, just like all of them. All of them. There's people in there in anywhere from the finance to the business to the politics world, just all of it. Pretty much confirms everything that everybody's been saying concerning blackmail and Mossad asset, all that kind of stuff. So, and like I said, I'm not going to get into it just because I'm less concerned with how wicked the wicked are being. Right? We know that the wicked act wickedly. I don't need to go into their specific acts of depravity. I would rather focus on how the righteous can be righteous. Right, so that's why we're going more into the commandments of God, right? His feast days, His high holy days, and that's what we'll be getting into tonight. How to celebrate, or rather, it doesn't even necessarily say how to celebrate, but rather what to celebrate concerning the day of the destruction of Nicanor and the days of Purim. So we'll go into this chronologically. All right, the days of Purim came first, so we're going to get into that history first, and then time permits, and God willing, we'll get into what happened as far as Nicanor's destruction, because that needs to be recounted as well. But it's 3 days in succession. All right, every year it's 3 days in succession in the 12th month every year. So. We'll go ahead and get into that. That's where we're at now. We're in the 12th month because spring is right around the corner. All right, so let me go ahead and bring this down, and we'll go ahead and get started here. And I want to start with, and y'all forgive me, my voice is not all the way back. And if y'all hear me coughing, it's because I got a lot of phlegm and leftovers, like flu symptoms and whatnot. So y'all forgive me for that. But I appreciate all your prayers and your warm wishes and whatnot. They have really kept me going. All right. So with that being said, I got this here in the Apocrypha, the Book of Esther, the rest of Esther. This says the additions to Esther, but it's the rest of Esther. Some Bibles may say. So 11, Esther 11, starting with 1. In the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemaeus and Cleopatra, Dysothius, who said he was a priest and Levite, and Ptolemaeus his son, brought this epistle of Purim, which they said was the same, and that Lysimachus, the son of Ptolemaeus that was in Jerusalem, had interpreted it. Right, so they had found this letter of Purim, right, during those days. In the 2nd year of the reign of Artaxerxes the Great, in the 1st day of the month Nisan, it says Mardochus, but this is Mordecai, the same as Mordecai, the son of Jairus, the son of Simei, the son of Sisai of the tribe of Benjamin, had a dream, who was a Jew and dwelt in the city of Susa, a great man, being a servitor in the king's court. He was also one of the captives which Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, carried from Jerusalem with Jeconiah, king of Judea. And this was his dream. Behold, a noise of a tumult with thunder and earthquakes and uproar in the land. And behold, 2 great dragons came forth ready to fight, and their cry was great. And at their cry all nations were prepared to battle, that they might fight against the righteous people. And lo, a day of darkness and obscurity, tribulation and anguish, affliction and great uproar upon earth. And the whole righteous nation was troubled, fearing their own evils, and were ready to perish. Then they cried unto God, and upon their cry, as it were from a little fountain, was made a great flood, even much water. The light and the sun rose up, and the lowly were exalted, and devoured the glorious. Right. So I just wanted to read that dream, because this is a dream that Mordecai had before all this transpired. Right, and we'll read the interpretation of the dream afterwards. Now, when Mordecai, who had seen this dream and what God had determined to do, was awake, he bare this dream in mind, and until night, by all means, was desirous to know it. Right? So he didn't understand it at the time, but he got the interpretation later, and we'll read that after we read the events. All right. So here we have. I want to start with Esther 2, just for a little bit of context. This king Ahasuerus here is the same as Artaxerxes, as we read in the Greek version, commonly known as Xerxes, or Xerxes the First. All right, in the Achaemenid, I don't know how you pronounce that word, Achaemenid Persian Empire. He invited his wife to to kind of show off her beauty and whatnot to his boys. And she didn't want to come, right? Because she was hanging with her girlfriends, right? So she defied the king, and so now he wants to replace her. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done, and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hegai or Hegi, Hej, however you want to pronounce that, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. We just read that because we just read his dream, right? And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter, right? So this is his cousin, but he's raising her up like a daughter, all right? So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was brought also into the king's house to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him. And he speedily gave her her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and seven maidens which were meet to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. Right. So Esther, she was wise and she carried favor with those who were her caretakers, basically, her handlers, however you want to say that. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. Right, so she was somebody who was racially ambiguous. All right, that was Esther. She was racially ambiguous and she hid her race. All right, and Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Right, so Mordecai kept an eye on her, but he said, "Look, don't show who you are or your relation to me or anything like that." All right. Now, when every maid's turn was come to go in to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, according to the manner of women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things and with other things for the purifying of the women. Then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Right, so it's like basically like American Idol or like X Factor, any of these shows, or a like game show where like you come in and like you kind of like introduce yourself like as a contestant, and then you keep going unless the king will say yay or nay, right, and bring you back anytime he wants to. But if he don't call you back, then it's time to go. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her, right? Because she didn't need too much, right? She wasn't asking for too much, and she was, easy to get along with. So Esther was taken unto the king Ahasuerus into his royal house in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. All right, and the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Right, so here we have a Hadassah named Esther by the Persians because that was their fertility goddess. All right, and so now she's made queen. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Right, it's a big celebration because he found a replacement. Right, he found his queen. Right, the cousin of Mordecai. All right, and when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai like as when she was brought up with him. Right, so she was always a good kid, listened to Mordecai, and she's still doing that even in her adulthood here. All right, and she still, even after she got married, she hasn't revealed what people are kindred, what her race is. All right, in those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, right, the doormen, the doorkeepers, were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. Right. So Mordecai here found out the spies, found out the plan, found out the secret plot, and saved the king's life. Basically. All right. He running up the ladder, and Mordecai had ended up saving the king's life here. All right. So all that's just for context, right? Understanding that, Esther is in this position to be the queen, right? She's queen, and Mordecai has saved the king's life. Unbeknownst to him, even, right? He doesn't even realize that Mordecai has saved his life here, right? So that's, again, just for context. And here in chapter 3, it says, after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Ammedatha, the Agagite. So the Agagite would make him of the children of Amalek, all right, Edom, but more specifically Amalek, who the Lord sworn to have war with from generation to generation, all right. But his name is Haman, all right, and advanced him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. Right, because Mordecai, he didn't hide his race, right? It's not like he was racially ambiguous or anything. He could have been, but he still told everybody that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai, right? So it's not enough for Haman that, he just come against Mordecai himself. Haman wants to wipe out all God's people now, all right? I guess that spirit is within Amalek to have war with God's people forever, all right? Because that's exactly the same type of spirit that was upon him when we came up out of Egypt. They were the first people to come against us. That's why God has a war against them forever. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. He said you shouldn't allow them to live, because they have their own set of laws that they keep that are different from everyone else. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Ammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Right? So the king said, okay, you can do whatever you want. All right. So the king agreed to exterminate the Israelites here. All right. It just says Jews, but it's really talking about all Israelites, because it's anytime that it's against one side or one tribe of God's people, it never ends there. It's against all of God's people. All right. If they start somewhere, they're not going to end there. Right. You give an inch, they'll take a mile, basically. Anytime the heathen try to come against God's people, it's never just one particular tribe or one kingdom. It's all God's people. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. and to take the spoil of them for a prey. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan's palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed, right? Because there was a lot of Jews there, right? So they didn't know how to respond. All right? But notice here, they have the plan, or at least Haman, and confirmed it with the king, has the plan to carry out the extermination of God's people on the 13th day of the 12th month, right? Because this is at the beginning of the year when they actually make this plot. And they say in 11 months, we're going to carry this out, all right? When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing. And many lay in sackcloth and ashes, right? Everybody's mourning because of this decree that's going out, all right? So, well, I say everybody, all the Jews, right? So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from it, but he received it not, right? Because, he's out there in the king's gate, right? And it's unlawful for him to be doing that the way that he's doing it, but he don't care. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make requests before him for her people. Right, so Mordecai said, hey, look, use your position as queen to go and convince the king not to do this thing. And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again, Esther spake unto Hatak and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. Right, that was the custom. If you come in unannounced, if you come in without appointment, you'll be put to death unless he holds out his scepter to you. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Obviously he don't want to hear that right now. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. Right. So Mordecai already knows that, hey, God's going to deliver us out of this, right? But don't think you yourself are just going to, skate by and have no part to play in this. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this, right? He said, look, use what the Most High has given you to the glorification of you and your father's house, as opposed to the destruction if you ignore this, ignore this call, essentially. If you ignore God's call, then it will be to your destruction. But he said, look, we're going to be delivered either way, right? Because God's not going to get rid of his people. Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise. And so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Excuse me. So this is Esther's banquet that she is planning. Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house and over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. Right? And so he said, What do you want? I would give you whatever you want, even to the half of my kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther had said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, if it please the king to grant my petition, to perform my request, the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king had said. Right? So she said, Come to my banquet tomorrow. Right? So kind of, stringing them along a bit, fattening them up. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh's wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther, the queen, did let no man come in with the king into the banquet that she had prepared but myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zeresh's wife and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. Right? So Zeresh, Haman's wife, said, Okay, just hang him. Just hang up Mordecai tomorrow. All right? And you won't have to see him no more. You won't have to deal with him anymore. All right? So here in Esther chapter 6 says, On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, What honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, There is nothing done for him. Right, so the king finally read the records and realized, oh, okay, Mordecai saved my life. How has he been thanked for this? How has he been honored for this? How has he been promoted for this? And they said, ain't nothing happened. He ain't got nothing for it. He ain't got no reward for it. And the king said, Who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, Behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, Let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, To whom would the king delight to honor more than myself? Right? So, of course, Haman in his pride here is thinking, oh, the king's going to do something special for me. And Haman answered the king, For the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king used to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head, and let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Right? So Haman clearly wants to usurp the throne from the king. That's what Haman wants here. All right? He's never like gone about to do that. But clearly he's describing this reward that he wants for himself. He wants to be in the royal apparel. He wants to, ride through the city. He wants to wear the crown, right? That's clearly what he wants here. But he doesn't realize that this is going to be done for Mordecai. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse that as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Right? Because I talked about this a little bit when I was going through Bible History 101. When it comes to these Persians, the Persian kings, the Achaemenid Empire, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and the Medes, they had a joint empire. They were seemed like they were kind of gullible to a certain extent, kind of movable, as far as like persuaded pretty easily, manipulated pretty easily. And in ways that worked in favor for God's people and in ways it didn't. Because he was ready and convinced by Haman that, just to exterminate God's people pretty easily. But he's also, as as Mordecai and Esther start bending his ear, we start to see that, he starts to be in favor of God's people, right? So he's kind of going back and forth either way here. Regardless, let's continue. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse and arrayed Mordecai and brought him on horseback through the street of the city and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Right? So Haman just had to make a parade for Mordecai, basically. And I don't remember why I brought that up, because it doesn't seem like the king really has any idea of this like beef that's going on between like Mordecai and Haman, right? It seems he's oblivious to all of it. Regardless. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house mourning and having his head covered, right? So he's ashamed and very sad, very gloomy now. And Haman and Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. Right? So they said, oh, well, he's God's people, of course. You're going to fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. Right? So immediately he goes from mourning with his family, he goes to the banquet. All right, lamenting over the fact that Mordecai was brought to prominence, was shown favor. All right, so the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen, and the king said unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. Right? So let my life be spared, let my people be spared. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? Right? So who is the man that is, trying to come against you and your people? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and queen, right? So Haman, this is like the worst day of Haman's life here. Rightfully so. He's wicked and evil. He's trying to wipe out all God's people. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden right? So, the king is conflicted here, right? Because he likes Haman. He thought Haman was on his side and whatnot. But, he likes his wife more, obviously. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther, the queen. For, forgive me. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king, right? The king is, he's plotting now, right? He's scheming on what to do against Haman. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face, right? So Haman is like following the queen around, following Esther around. She crawls up on the bed or whatever. He crawls up after her. He's like, please, please, like crawling up on the bed, begging her. And then here comes the king walk in. It's a sight that he didn't want to see. It looks precarious because it looks like he's climbing up onto the bed with her, right? So as soon as he's like, oh, you're trying to rape my wife now? And then bag on his head, right? The executioners put the bag on the head right there and take him to the prison. Right, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon, right? So, and they say, Haman made this for Mordecai, who spoke good for the king, right? Mordecai saved your life, and he's trying to kill him. So, none of this is working out well for Haman at this point. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified, right? So they ended up hanging Haman. All praises to the Most High for that, all right? The wicked enemy against God's people was taken away from him. All right, so let's see. Because it goes on to, I don't know if I necessarily want to read all of this. I mean, we're already in chapter 8 and 9 here. But I guess we can skim through some of this real quick. So on that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her, right? As in like surrogate father, basically. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai, and Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So, excuse me. And Esther spake yet again before the king, fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews, which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people, or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. Right, so they went ahead and wrote, reversing the orders, right, reversing the edicts that Haman had them write out. Right. Let's see. It says, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together and to stand for their life, and to destroy and to slay and to cause to perish all the power of the people in the province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take spoil of them for a prey. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is upon the month Adar, right? So what would have been the day of the destruction and demise of God's people turned into the day of defense, the day of salvation, the day of deliverance of God's people. All right. Similar to how you see that with the days of Hanukkah. All right. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. Right? Because the decree already went out, as far as Haman's decree went out. So it's possible that people would not necessarily get this reverse decree. Or just people who wanted to, try to wipe out God's people would do that regardless, right? So it just is a royal decree that they can stand up for themselves, they can fight back, right? And that none of the official king's army, none of the king's men would be coming against God's people, coming against the Jews, right? So the posts that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hasted and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. All right. I'll read this here. Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor, and in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day, and many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Right, so a lot of people started keeping the commandments. All right, so I'll just go ahead and get down to the point here. As you can see, they also killed Haman's kids, who would have followed through with his plans. Let's see. The king said to Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? And now what is thy petition? It shall be granted thee. Or what is thy request further? It shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, right, for 2 days. Let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hang Haman's 10 sons, right, just to show an example, right, to give an example of people that come against God's people. Look, you're not going to stand. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month of Dar, and slew 300 men in Shushan, but on the prey they laid not their hand. All right. But the other Jews, that were in the king's provinces, gathered themselves together and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 70 and 5,000, but they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 13th day of the month of Dar, and on the 14th day of the same rested day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Right, so 13th and 14th day were days of feasting and gladness. All right, but the Jews that were at Shushan assembled themselves together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th thereof, and on the 15th day of the same, they rested and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Right, 14th, 15th day. That's the original days of Purim, but the 13th day is the day of the destruction of Nicanor. All right, it's all 3 days. All 3 days had significance back then, as far as during Esther's time, because that's when all 3 days, it all happened on the 13th day, but the feasting days came on the 14th and 15th days. But now it's just all 3 days because they all show significance. I'm about to get to that here shortly. Therefore, the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month of Dar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. All right. I'm just kind of skipping around here. Let's see. And I guess I'll start with 23 here. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman the son of Ammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they call these days Purim, after the name of Pur, right? So Pur as in lot, or lots, Purim, right? Because I am on Hebrew words, or just like the letter mem on Hebrew words, the same as like the letter S on English words, making it plural. All right, so it's lots, plural, lots. Therefore, for all the words of this letter and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them the Jews ordained, and took upon them and upon their seed, and upon all such as join themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they should keep these 2 days according to their writing and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept out every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed, the 14th and 15th day of the 12th month. All right, the days of feasting. All right. So does it say that here? We read that up there earlier. Yeah. Verse 21. To establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly. All right. So 14th, 15th day of the 12th month. That's Purim. Let's go ahead and get the interpretation of the dream, and then we'll read about the destruction of Nicanor real quick. So this is the interpretation of the dream here in Esther 10. I'll just read it on this. We don't necessarily need the first 3 verses. Then Mordecai said, God hath done these things. For I remember a dream which I saw concerning these matters, and nothing thereof hath failed. All right, so this is the dream. A little fountain became a river, and there was light in the sun and much water. This river is Esther, whom the king had married and made queen. Right, this little fountain became great. All right, the 2 dragons are I and Ammon. Right, so Haman the son of Ammedatha, and the one dragon being Mordecai himself. And the nations were those that were assembled to destroy the name of the Jews. And my nation is as Israel, which cried to God and were saved. For the Lord hath saved his people, and the Lord hath delivered us from all those evils, and God hath wrought signs and great wonders, which have not been done among the Gentiles. Therefore hath he made 2 lots, one for the people of God, and another for all the Gentiles. And these 2 lots came at the hour and time and day of judgment for God among all nations. So God remembered his people and justified his inheritance. Therefore those days shall be unto them in the month of Adar, the 14th and 15th day of the same month, with an assembly and joy and with gladness before God, according to the generations, forever among his people. Right? So there's Purim for you. All right, Purim would be, I believe tonight is the day of the destruction of Nicanor. So tomorrow night we'll start Purim. That'll go on into Monday technically. But from there, let's go ahead and get Second Maccabees concerning Nicanor's destruction. And we'll get right to the point there. Excuse me. So a little context here. You can read about this in either in Second Maccabees or in First Maccabees. It covers the same history. In First Maccabees, chapter 7 is when it talks about the destruction of Nicanor. All right, but essentially, this is during the days, not during the days of Antiochus Epiphanes, but his successor, I suppose. But you have Nicanor was sent into Judea and Jerusalem to basically to take it, right? He did all his wicked moving as far as came into Jerusalem and pointed with his proud hand, his proud finger, saying, "I'm going to take this and that, and I'm going to lay this temple down," and all this boasting that he was going to do against God and his people. All right. But Nicanor, hearing that Judas, this is Judas Maccabeus, the family of Mattathias' children, who stood against the wicked Greeks who tried to force the people into idolatry and all manner of profanation, uncleanness, all manner of wickedness. Right? They stood against that wickedness coming from the Greeks. But Nicanor, hearing that Judas and his company were in the strong places about Samaria, resolved without any danger to set upon them on the Sabbath day. right? Because Nicanor, he had no morals, right? He didn't have any respect or any kind of honor about him. All right. Nevertheless, the Jews that were compelled to go with him said, "Oh, destroy not so cruelly and barbarously, but give honor to that day, which he that seeth all things hath honored with holiness above all other days." Right. So even the Jews who sided with the Greeks, right? The Jews who had sided against, Judas and Judas Maccabeus and Simon Thassi and all the rest of the sons of Mattathias, the ones who had sided with the Greeks, even they were saying, no, we still honor the Sabbath, so please don't come against them on the Sabbath, right? Our God told us to keep the Sabbath, so please don't come against them on that day. Then the most ungracious wretch, Nicanor, demanded if there were a mighty one in heaven that had commanded the Sabbath day to be kept. He said, "Oh, is that so? Is there a mighty one in heaven? Is there a mighty one in heaven who says we got to keep this day holy?" And when they said, "There is in heaven a living Lord and mighty who commanded the seventh day to be kept," then said the other, "And I also am mighty upon earth, and I command to take arms and to do the king's business." Yet he obtained not to have his wicked will done. Right? So Nicanor said, "Oh, there's a mighty one in heaven. Well, I'm mighty upon earth." Right? This wicked and abominable wretch Nicanor here. Right? The pride and the ego is something that persists. Right? When it comes to whether it be Haman or Nicanor or whoever it is. All right? The enemies of God always have a wicked pride about them. All right? Let's see. So Nicanor, in exceeding pride and haughtiness, determined to set up a public monument of his victory over Judas and them that were with him. But Maccabeus had ever sure confidence that the Lord would help him, right? Because obviously God is always with his people, fighting with those who fight against wickedness. Wherefore he exhorted his people not to fear the coming of the heathen against him, but to remember the help which in former times they had received from heaven, and now to expect the glory and aid which should come unto them from the Almighty. Right? So not only the help that Israel had received in former times, like historically, but also the help that them specifically, those Assyrians fighting against the Greeks, had specifically received in former battles. All right, because God had already showed them signs and wonders as far as when they were fighting different battles, against these Greeks. All right. And so comforting them out of the law and the prophets, and withal putting them in mind of the battles that they went afore, he made them more cheerful. Right. That was something about Judas Maccabeus. Not only was he very mighty, right, in battle. He was very mighty in battle, a very skilled warrior. But he was also somebody who could rally the people. Right, like the Braveheart movie, like he gives that big speech before they go out to the last battle. That was Judas Maccabeus. He give great wartime speeches. He was a great leader of the people. Right, led the people into battle. All right, very very fierce, very mighty warrior. All right. And when he had stirred up their minds, he gave them their charge, showing them wherewithal the falsehood of the heathen and the breach of oaths, right? Showing how these heathen, and specifically the Greeks here, but these heathen do so much wickedness that there's no way, there's no chance they have against people who, mightily follow God, right? Because in the law of God, there is strength, right? And in breaking your oaths, lying and deceit, there's always downfall in that, right? There is no strength in that. There's only weakness in that. All right? Thus, he armed every one of them, not so much with defensive shields and spears, as with comfortable and good words. And beside that, he told them a dream worthy to be believed, as if it had been so indeed, which did not a little rejoice them, right? It rejoiced them a lot, right? It didn't little rejoice them, it rejoiced them a lot. And this was his vision, that Onias who had been high priest, a virtuous and a good man, reverend in conversation, gentle in condition, well spoken also, and exercised from a child in all points of virtue, holding up his hands, prayed for the whole body of the Jews. Right? So he said, look, I've seen in the spirit that Onias is praying for us in this vision. This done, in like manner, there appeared a man with gray hairs and exceeding glorious, who was of a wonderful, excuse me, y'all forgive me, who was of a wonderful and excellent majesty. Then Onias answered, saying, this is a lover of the brethren, who prayed much for the people and for the holy city, to wit, Jeremiah, the prophet of God. Whereupon Jeremiah, holding forth his right hand, gave to Judas a sword of gold, and in giving it spake thus, take this holy sword, a gift from God, with the which thou shalt wound the adversaries. Right? So, in this vision, Judas Maccabeus had received this sword, this holy sword from Jeremiah. Thus being well comforted by the words of Judas, which were very good, and able to stir them up to valor, and to encourage the hearts of the young men, they determined not to pitch camp, but courageously to set upon them, and manfully to try the matter by conflict, because the city and the sanctuary and the temple were in danger. Right? So they didn't even normally you would like approach, especially in those days, like you would approach where like a battlefield, right? And then you would set up shop and maybe go to sleep for the night and then go out the next day into battle. They just ran straight into it. They didn't bother pitching camp. For the care that they took for their wives and their children, their brethren and folks, was in least account with them. But the greatest and principal fear was for the holy temple, right? So they were fighting for their families, but for the most important thing on their mind was that the Greeks could not defile the temple anymore, right? Because they had already cleansed it once from the wicked Greeks defiling it. Also, they that were in the city took not the least care, being troubled for the conflict abroad. And now, when as all looked what should be the trial, and the enemies were already come near, and the army was set in array, and the beasts conveniently placed, and the horsemen set in wings, Maccabeus, seeing the coming of the multitude, and the diverse preparations of armor, and the fierceness of the beasts, stretched out his hands toward heaven, and called upon the Lord that worketh wonders, knowing that victory cometh not by arms, but even as it seemeth good to him, he giveth it to such as are worthy. Right? So he sees that they're outnumbered. The Greek regiment is far more organized. Right? They have all the different, horsemen. They have maybe even some elephants and whatnot. All right. Therefore, in his prayer, he said after this manner, O Lord, thou didst send thine angel in the time of Hezekiah, king of Judea, and did slay in the host of Sennacherib 185,000. Right? We read about that in learning the word concerning the prophet Isaiah. Right? That the angel killed 185,000 of the army of Assyria in one night. Wherefore now also, O Lord of heaven, send a good angel before us, for a fear and dread unto them. And through the might of thine arm, let those be stricken with terror that come against thy holy people to blaspheme. And he ended thus. Then Nicanor and they that were with him came forward with trumpets and songs. But Judas and his company encountered the enemies with invocation and prayer, so that fighting with their hands and praying unto God with their hearts, they slew no less than 35,000 men. For through the appearance of God, they were greatly cheered. Right? So God helped them in battle. Now, whether that be an angel or whether that be Christ, whatever the case may be, God helped them in battle. Right? Fought alongside them in battle. All right. Now, when the battle was done, returning again with joy, they knew that Nicanor lay dead in his harness. Right? So they killed Nicanor in that battle. Right? 35,000 men and Nicanor being one of those. Y'all forgive me. Now, when the battle was done, returning again with joy, they knew that Nicanor lay dead in his harness. Then they made a great shout and a noise, praising the Almighty in their own language, right, in the Hebrew. And Judas, who was ever the chief defender of the citizens, both in body and mind, and who continued his love toward his countrymen all his life, commanded to strike off Nicanor's head and his hand with his shoulder and bring them to Jerusalem. So when he was there and called them of his nation together and set the priests before the altar, he sent for them that were of the tower and showed them vile Nicanor's head and the hand of that blasphemer which with proud brags he had stretched out against the holy temple of the Almighty. Right, so he was saying, "Oh, this right here, I'm gonna tear this down. I'm gonna put up this right here. I'm gonna do it." Right, so they took all this. Right, they took his head. They took all that shoulder, arm, all of it. Right, as an example. All right, just like Haman's sons that they hanged up, took them as an example. All right, and when he had cut out the tongue of that ungodly Nicanor, he commanded that they should give it by pieces unto the fowls, and hang up the rewards of his madness before the temple. So every man praised toward the heaven the glorious Lord, saying, Blessed be he that hath kept his own place undefiled. He hanged also Nicanor's head upon the tower, an evident and manifest sign unto all the help of the Lord. And they ordained with a common decree in no case to let that day pass without solemnity, but to celebrate the 13th day of the 12th month, which in the Syrian tongue is called Adar, the day before Mordecai's day. Right, so now it's 3 days instead of those 2, but even in the days of Esther, those 3 days were significant. Right, it's just the 14th and 15th day were the day of feasting. Right, now it's the 13th, 14th, and 15th day. We just got all of it. Right, it's a time to remember that God, does deliver His people, does redeem His people against the enemy. We both, or I should say, all 3 of these days are recognition of that, our recognition of the destruction of God's enemies to the exaltation of His people. All right. He said, and thus went it with Nicanor, and from that time forth the Hebrews had the city in their power, and here will I make an end, and I will make my end the same. All right, so I'll go ahead and close it out with Matthew 26. Hope y'all learned something about Esther and the day of the Esther and the day of the destruction of Nicanor, Purim, all that kind of good stuff. All right. I know I'm still a little under the weather, but Lord's will, I'll be all right. All right. It was the flu. It was the flu, and it got pretty rough at times, and pretty much took me out for a week. But all praises to the Most High, I'm still here. All right. So looks like there may be comments or something. No. Something. I guess some kind of alerts. Either way. All right. So I'll go ahead and close it out. Now when Jesus was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head, as he said at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, To what purpose is this waste? What his ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, Why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she had poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that this woman have done be told for a memorial of her. So with that, hope y'all learned something. We keep the, I guess similar to the way that we keep the memorial of, the sister Hadassah, right? The same way that we keep the memorial for the brother Judas Maccabeus, who delivered us out of the hands of, Haman, son of Hammedatha, and Nicanor, respectively. We also keep the memorial of this sister, who did a wonderful thing for our Lord, right? This sister Mary here. So, with all that being said, happy Sabbath. Say shalom, and let God be magnified. Happy day of the destruction of Nicanor and Purim.